What is up, you guys? Teller checking in for Dana White's Contender Series Week 10, the last episode of the season. Another successful season. Many fighters signed. Without a doubt, this is the number one feeder into the UFC at this point in time. I mean, there's more fighters coming off this show than any other promotion out there on the regional scene. I mean, this show is just absolutely phenomenal. And again, I just want to state that this season was another very successful season. A lot of ridiculous fights took place. Some of the most entertaining fights that we see, that we witness, are taking place on Dana White's Contender Series. Just the format of the show pushes so much entertainment. I don't know why, it's just reminiscent to the old WEC days. You guys know I always rave about the WEC. For whatever reason, I feel like that promotion pushed very fan-pleasing type of fights. Now, obviously, they had the lower weight divisions. Maybe that had something to do with it. But Dana White's Contender Series, without a doubt, is the most exciting show when it comes to just the fighters performing and going out there looking to take each other's heads off. So how about this? We got 6 fights set to take place tomorrow night. All the fighters have already weighed in and whatnot, so shouldn't be any mishaps. We should be seeing all 6 of these fights take place. Remember now, Davi Bittencourt versus Lucas Rocha. That was a fight that was supposed to take place on a previous episode. It got pushed to this card due to Lucas missing weight. So again, 6 fights, which I'm even more excited for this card based on that, because sometimes the 5 fights fly by way too quick. And now we got 6 fights, and we got some very intriguing matchups. There's some big names on this card. Big names as far as fighters fighting on a Dana White's Contender Series, I would say. You got Yuri, Panferov. He was recently on Dana White's looking for a fight. He was featured there. There's a couple other legitimate prospects fighting on this card. So I'm excited for it. Let me not go on too much more. Let's jump into the first fight.
Welcome to the show. This is the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.
Kicking the card off, we have the rescheduled match of Davi Bittencourt and Lucas Rocha. This fight now taking place in the bantamweight division. It was initially supposed to take place in the flyweight division. Rocha came in about 5 pounds overweight. And, it's worth noting that Bittencourt did cut weight. He was very professional, came in on weight last time around. So he is cutting weight twice within a very short time frame. That's not typically good for fighters. That's something to take note of. Will it impact the chin? Some people are believers in that. It's obviously not good for your health. That's one thing for sure. As they are now matched up in the bantamweight division, I feel that could potentially benefit Bittencourt though as well, because Bittencourt seems to be the more naturally larger fighter, as we saw these guys stare down today. Bittencourt, much more muscular and much more lean and filled for the division, whereas Rocha is a little soft. He seems to be the smaller guy that's really doing something wrong. And there's also the X factor of why he missed weight in the first place. Maybe there's something wrong, maybe some kind of injury that affected him cutting weight. So that's something that you also take note of. Again, we'll go back to the tape on these two fighters. Lucas Rocha, a very wild striker, an absolute fight finisher. The same could be said for Bittencourt as far as him being a fight finisher as well, but I would say he's more of a grappling-based fighter. This is a fight, when I look at the matchup, it's hard for me to see this fight going to a decision. I know it's a lower weight matchup, but these guys are going to go at it. And Lucas Rocha, you take a look at his lone loss. He was knocked out. You can pull that fight up on YouTube. He was finished against Alan Gabriel, and his striking defense is what cost him in that fight. And he's got away with it in some of these other victories, but there's no question about it that he is lacking defensively, drops his hands at times. He's he's a very offensive fighter, and then is there to be countered. I could see Bittencourt clipping him with the counter shot as Rocha gets a little bit too overzealous in there. So it's hard to kind of gauge that striking matchup. I still would say that I slightly edge Rocha striking. I think he'll come out more confident and more on the attack, but he will be vulnerable to a counter shot. But I like Bittencourt's grappling here. And now the fact that he's coming in with that extra weight and just looking to be the larger fighter, I think there's a very realistic possibility that he can use his grappling to potentially finish this fight. I'm going to say that there's a good chance that Bittencourt clips Rocha with a counter shot, or just somehow one way or another gets this fight down to the mat and has some success there. There's multiple avenues for Bittencourt. This is a tough fight to really call. A lot of moving parts going into this match here. But now I'm going to be swapping my pick. Initially, I was on Rocha. I like Bittencourt now from what I'm seeing. And another X factor too, as we saw the two fighters on the scale, you see Rocha with the antics as he's facing off of Bittencourt. Bittencourt, on the other hand, is just strictly business, and I like that. Seems to be the more professional, more determined fighter, and I think he's just going to find a way to get his hand raised one way or another, so I'm edging him here. On Bovada.lv, he opened up as a plus 110. Slight movement his way. He's now at even odds, and I think that you see the line movement based on the way that they just looked on the scales. Rocha, a little bit more soft. Bittencourt, looking chiseled up, looking determined, and I wouldn't even be surprised by the time the fight takes place if Bittencourt is a slight favorite. Maybe he's a minus 125, 130. We see that line continue to go that trajectory. All right, so that will be my pick, and I'm leaning a finish one way or another because this matchup just smells like a finish to me. Over to the lightweight division, we have Isakov taking on Marquel Mederos, the Factory X fighter. We'll start off with this dude, Isakov, who is fighting out of Luxembourg. He's 33 years old, 12 professional fights. I would say he's a little bit more of a seasoned fighter. Not an overwhelming amount of pro experience, but you take a look at his age and the way that he fights in the cage. He's a very cerebral fighter, a very methodical fighter. Not maybe the most exciting, not the most like barn burner type of fighter, but he's a guy that's methodical in there, and he's a fighter that gets finishes. All right, so even though he's not a guy that's just going out there to just steamroll you within seconds, I mean, this is still a guy out of 12 professional fights, out of 10 victories. This is a guy that has 8 finishes. Okay, he's only gone to a decision in those victories 2 times. So I mean, understand that he's a guy that has fought for the vast majority of his career up in weight. Compared to the lightweight division, he's fought at as high as 175 pounds. He's fought a lot at 165 pounds, the super lightweight division, they call it there, and a division I would love to see in the UFC. But again, now this fight taking place at 155 pounds. He came in on weight. I thought he looked pretty good. He's a very physically imposing guy. Marquel Maderos looked good on the scales and at the stare down as well. Seems to be a very confident dude. I would say Maderos' strength is his striking. You take a look at the majority of his victories, 5 of them via knockout. The fights you could pull up on YouTube, working to stuff takedowns and eventually put an onslaught on his opposition. So I think that this fight is going to, if it's going to go good for him, it's going to need to play out just like that. He's going to need to stuff takedowns from Isakov, and he's going to need to eventually break him as he gasses out going in for those takedowns, and then Marquel needs to break him, counter striking, and then just picking up the pace and really putting on him with the striking. So that's the recipe I see here. Marquel, much younger, just 26 years old, 8 pro fights. He's much more green. I think he has a lot more to learn, and I am picking Isakov to get the job done here. I just think that he's going to be a little bit more prepared for this opportunity, and I think that he's going to have some success getting this fight down to the mat. And even if he doesn't consistently get the fight down to the mat, I think that he could just change levels, mix things up, and have some success in the feet as well, and just mix things up enough to get the job done. But I think he's the more well-rounded fighter. He's the more prepared fighter, as you just saw him getting in some work there with Khamzat Chimaev. And I do have to pick him to get the job done here. Marquel Mederos, real quick, let's just run through his resume a little bit. See what kind of fighters he's been defeating, right? His last opponent was 8-8, finished him in the first round, a 500 fighter. Nothing really to talk about there. An 5-1 fighter, a 5-1 fighter, a 5-0 fighter. I mean, not an overwhelming resume. And we could also pull up Isakov's resume just to see who he's been out there defeating. I think there was a couple respectable opponents. Rusian Tadiv, which is a fight. I think you could pull that up on YouTube as well. 13-2, not really a bad record there. Ahmad Laban, 12-4. Now the Maxim Soroka fighter, coming in 8 fights under the halfway line. That's not a good look. But still, he's been in there with some respectable fighters. Also, his first loss, I mean, he was in there with Levan Chokili, on the pronunciation there, but you guys know what I'm talking about. He fights over in Bellator, and I actually think he's a very good fighter. But, I don't know how much weight that really carries because he was finished in the first round, but still, he's been in there with those types of guys. Lost the decision to Mohamed Grabinski. Again, I will take Isakov to get the job done. I think he's just going to be the more prepared fighter. I could see him having some success with his grappling, but if he has zero success getting this fight to the mat and using that pressure against the cage and whatnot, I could see him gassing out, and I could see Maderos starting to counter him there, and maybe he gets a finish or just starts to take rounds with his striking. So there's a possibility there, but I like Isakov, especially with the minus 171 line, or even down to a minus 161 line. It's not a very steep line, so if you like him, you could target him there. Actually, you see some action coming in on him. This is relatively recent. This was about 21 minutes ago, I believe, where you now see Isakov as high as a minus 182. You might see him settle in right around a minus 195, minus 200 favorite, depending. I think people like the way he looked in the scales. Give me Isakov to mix things up and just to be the more mature and more prepared fighter here. I'm really digging this matchup here. You got Torrez, Finney taking on Yuri, Panferov. A lot of you guys are familiar with Panferov from that episode of Dana White's Looking for a Fight. Definitely take note, as they talked about even on the show, that he should have been fighting in the middleweight division. He's been fighting up in weight, more towards the light heavyweight division. He's a fighter that should have been fighting in the middleweight division, and he looked great on the scales. So there's a big X factor coming into this matchup. Both these fighters, grappling-based fighters, which I like to see those types of matchups. I'm curious who would get the better there. And then a lot of times when you have grappler versus grappler, you guys know it ends up being a fun fight on the feet. But both these fighters do not really impress me with their striking. Now, that doesn't mean that it won't be fun to watch. Two guys slugging it out sloppily on the feet. It can still play out to be an entertaining type of match there. Not to say that I actually think that's how the fight's going to go, because I think that one of these fighters is actually going to have some success with his grappling, and I think that's going to be Torrez Finney. I've been quite impressed breaking down tape on him. Now, he hasn't been fighting the most steep competition, but the way that this guy goes in there with his extremely stout frame, the way he goes in there and just slaughters these guys with his grappling, just completely bulldozes them, lifts these guys over his head, slams them down. I mean, this guy is so determined. You see it before the bell even rings. This guy's looking across the cage, and you know he knows exactly what he's about to do. He's about to go out there and get his opposition down to the mat. Now, I don't believe he's going to be able to continuously do that throughout his entire career, but I wouldn't be shocked if we see him do that in this matchup here against Panferov. Now, remember, Panferov was all hyped up on that episode of Dana White's Looking for a Fight, and although he did get the first round submission, Matt, Sarah, Dana White, and all them weren't really overly impressed. If you remember, he got clipped with the shot on the feet as well. So he was a little off cue with his striking. Maybe Finney could do something there. I wouldn't bank on that, because actually I'll make sure I say Finney's striking has not impressed me, to say the least. Okay, so I want to say that. I actually think that Panferov's striking might actually be better than Finney's, but when it's all said and done, I just don't know if Panferov's going to be able to stop the train of Finney just completely pushing forward and just bombarding him. I think that Finney will get on top. Finney also, you take a look at his 6 pro fights, which isn't a lot, still 24 years old. This guy's young, man, full of testosterone. He's finished 5 of his 6 victories there. He's gone to the second round, late in the second round in his first fight. He's gone to the third round in one of his finishes. He's gone to a decision just 2 fights ago. So, it's not a guy that we've seen it a lot in Dana White's Contender Series, where we see fighters that have these types of resumes, but they're all first round. And then there is a big question mark. I think that we've seen he can go past the first round, and this guy will continuously look to bulldoze his opponent. So I'm going to pick Torrez Finney here. But I also think there's some X factors. Like I said, Yuri Panferov looked phenomenal at this weight as he was on the scales and at the stare downs. And, he's a little bit more of a rangy fighter. Can he keep the fight standing? Can he have some success with his striking? Also, Panferov is not a slouch with his grappling. So if Finney gets a little reckless with his grappling, forcing takedowns and forcing the fight down to the mat, if he gets sloppy, look at this, 5 submission victories for Panferov. Panferov, he's pulled off Kimuras. That was the victory that he pulled off on Dana White's Looking for a Fight. Rear naked chokes, arm bars. He has a diverse amount of submissions in his arsenal, and you have to be careful of that as well. But at the end of the day, like I said, I've been impressed with what I've seen with what I've seen from Finney, and I don't know. I don't see Panferov stopping that pressure, man. So Finney right now, over on Jazz Sports, he's a minus 238, opened up as a minus 228. He's a pretty decent favorite here. He was a minus 230 on Bovada. He's now minus 220. Action going the other way there. And listen, as I take a look at the line, I think that he should be more of like a minus 185. Again, Panferov is a respectable opponent. These are two fighters that still have a lot to prove. And I don't know how you feel overwhelmingly confident in a guy like Finney who has no striking. And, minus 230, that's a little high for me. But give me Torrez, Finney to win this fight. I'm going to say goes to a decision, but he just continuously successfully gets takedowns and steals rounds like that. We got a Dana White's Contender Series return fighter. Conor Matthews is getting another opportunity on the show. He's taking on the Brazilian Jair Farias. Conor Matthews, if you guys remember, he lost to Francis Marshall at that point in time. I believe both fighters were 5-0. They're both undefeated. Coming into that matchup, both of those fighters didn't have a lot of experience, and Francis Marshall was just a step ahead that entire fight. That fight took place just about a year ago. So since that fight, he went out there and got a victory over Andrew Cruz. That was a huge victory for him. I believe that was on that Dana White's Looking for a Fight episode. He was able to get in the UFC's good graces enough to get another opportunity here. I don't know if he's necessarily deserving of it. We're going to find out tomorrow night, but he has this very rangy Brazilian fighter in front of him, Jair Farias. He's a fight finisher. He's 10-0. He's undefeated. Out of 10 of his victories, 7 of them are via knockout, 2 via submissions, only gone to a decision once. Like I said, he's extremely long. I don't know if he's going to use that length to his advantage from the outside. He's a dude that kind of fights. He has that street fighting type of energy to him. And you watch his return fight on YouTube against Elvis Silva. That was a fight that he was coming in off a 4-year layoff. I mean, he was just in Silva's face, man, just looking to really close the distance and just land heavy shots. And I could see him doing something very similar here. I think he's going to come out and look to just starch Conor Matthews. I really expect the fight to play like that. I don't expect him to sit on the outside looking to counter with his length. And we'll see how that goes for him. If I could see Conor Matthews potentially having an avenue here, I think that he needs to use his grappling. Maybe he could test Jair, get in on the inside, use his wrestling. Maybe he gets in Farias' guard. And, we could see if he could have some success there. It's worth noting also that although Jair is he's very aggressive and he looks to go out there and knock his opponents out, he is also lacking defensively. Another fighter that is lacking defensively. His strikes, his boxing shots, they come out very wide. They come from a wide angle, and maybe Matthews can counter him, but I'm not really that impressed with Conor Matthews' striking, so I'm not really banking on that. I'm taking Jair Farias to get the job done here, and I'm gonna lean finish. I mean, this guy is a fight finisher. I think he's definitely gonna go out here and be very, very aggressive. That's why I'm leaning finish, because I mean, this is a huge stage for him, and he's already done this on the regional scene. This guy storms across the cage. I think that's what he does here once again. So we'll see if Matthews breaks. He has never been finished. His only loss was against Marshall, and he went to a decision. So he's a tough dude. It might not be easy, but we'll see what Farias can do. And let me be clear, there are some question marks about Farias still. Okay, there's question marks about him with his strength of schedule, the layoff and whatnot. He's a minus 170 on Bovada. We see him dipped up. He went up to a minus 165. The action came back on him, and I'm sure that was due to how he looked on the scales today. So maybe you see that line continue to trend to a minus 180 or something like that, just due to that size advantage. I like Farias, and I'll take him landing a big shot and getting a finish in the second round. Now, you definitely don't want to miss this fight. We got Rickson, Zenidim taking on André, Lima. Fight taking place in the flyweight division. If you guys saw the stare down today, man, it was spicy, and I really like the energy that Lima brought. Lima just seems to be very, very cocky, and it seems to be the type of cockiness, the type of arrogance that is going to carry over to success. I mean, when you break down tape on him, you see why he's confident and cocky as well. A very talented striker. I've liked what I've seen from him on the feet. I think he's going to have a pretty solid edge there. Now, the opposition here, Rickson, Zenidim. This is a fighter that is very aggressive on the feet as well. He's 14-1, has a nice little record here. You take a look at his 14 wins, though. The vast majority of them coming by way of submission. 10 submissions. He's a fight finisher. He's finished 12 of his 14 victories. You take a look at his lone loss; it was via decision. It was very recently against Rodrigo Vera, a respectable fighter. Bounced back with a victory over Carlos Hauschen, where he finished him in the second round. The Peruvian fighter there, also a decently respectable fighter. So I think that both of these fighters have potential to get into the UFC and be another addition to the ever so growing or the ever so exciting flyweight division. You guys know I love the flyweight division. I would love to see both these guys work their way into the division. I hope that this is just a very entertaining fight, and maybe we see a double contract once again. That'd be great to see. In the last episode of the season, we saw a couple of those already. And here's the thing, man. When I take a look at Rickson, Zenidim, I've seen him on his back a little bit throughout his fights, even some of the fights that, where he got the job done. I didn't like how he was on his back so much. I also feel that André Lima is a little bit more of he's the more physically imposing fighter, much more muscular. But it comes down to this. André Lima, to me, just seems to be the real deal. And it's specifically based on, he's a well-rounded fighter. I think he's a decently well-rounded fighter, but his striking is nasty. I really, really like just the way he moves his head movement. He's very defensively sound as well. This isn't some guy that's just going out there looking to steamroll you and could potentially be countered. I love to see fighters that are very sharp offensively, but also are very sharp defensively. And that's what I see when I break down tape on him, man. This guy has great footwork, and I don't think that he's going to be there to be hit, and I think that he's going to be landing quite a bit throughout this fight. All right, so yes, I am going to be on André Lima here. He's 6-0, has less than half the amount of pro experience compared to Zenidim. But again, just when you break down the tape on him, I think that he's the real deal, and he will prove to be a solid addition to the UFC flyweight division. Only 24 years old, so much room for growth. And we could take a look at the level of competition. I mean, just had a victory over Igor Talin, finished him in the second round over an LFA, 7-2 fighter. Not a bad look. Early on, it is what it is. And also has a lot of kickboxing and Muay Thai fights under his belt, of course, correlating to how sharp his striking has looked. This guy has experience, and I will take him to get the job done here. Again, Zenidim has never been finished. Another fighter that we're going to test that. I'm going to say Lima potentially gets that finish here. We're testing these fighters that have never been finished, but we could potentially see some finishes for the first time on these fighters' record when it's all said and done after Tuesday night. So give me André Lima via finish. I think that they go to war, and I could just see Lima landing a big shot. So let's go take a look at the betting line and see what we're talking about here. André Lima right now he's roughly a minus 250. He's a minus 250 on Bovada, opened as a minus 230. We're seeing slight movement towards his way. And I think that is based on the tape, maybe the confidence at the stare down as well. But based on the tape, this guy is a nasty striker. And we will see if Zenidim can test him down on the mat and maybe pull off some type of sub. I'm going with Lima, though. Made that clear. And then we head over to the bantamweight division for the headliner, where we have Cortavious, Romious taking on Ramon Taveras. I thought it was so funny because as soon as I heard Cortavious' name, the first thing I thought of was that name sounds like a gladiator type of name. And then you take a look at his nickname, Are You Not Entertained? Just perfect there. Roman Taveras, you guys remember him. He just fought, I believe, in the first episode. Maybe not the first episode. Maybe it was the second or third episode of this season. It took place 4 weeks ago, actually, so I'm off on that. Maybe it was 4 episodes in or whatnot, whatever. You guys remember he got knocked out by that dude Sydney, and it was obviously a quick stoppage. But at the end of the day, do not misunderstand what you saw. Taveras was lacking in there, and he was hit with a big shot. He was dropped, and he was hurt. And I think that he was on his way to being finished anyway. So, I mean, you're looking at a loss right there, in my opinion. Maybe I'm being a little harsh on him, but wasn't overly impressed with the way that he showcased himself. You take a look at his record even coming into that fight, and had a very padded record. If you guys remember, we talked about this before. Very, very low level fighters on his resume, even though he was going out there getting a bunch of finishes. I'm just not overly impressed. If you want to say he has one edge going into this fight, he has a little bit of a length, I would say a length advantage. I was going to say a length and a size advantage. I'll stick with just length because Cortavious Romious is another fighter on this card that is built extremely stout. He's very built very wide. Man, he's a brick house. He's only 5'4", but he's very physically strong. And this is another guy, kind of reminds me of the fighter that we talked about earlier, in a sense, Torrez, Finney. Just he is very determined to get this fight down to the mat, and he will look to bombard you and get you down and rain down some ground and pound. And that's what I see him doing. I think he's going to get Taveras down to the mat, and I think that he's going to ground and pound him up here. As I was pulling up tape on him, the guy is just a very confident fighter. I like that aspect of him. I think that when the bell rings, he's going to be storming across the cage and looking to take Taveras out. Also, definitely something that stood out to me as well as he comes off that first round armbar submission over Nate Williams. This is a fighter that is pretty polished up with his Brazilian jiu-jitsu, right? He's very muscular and has all that strength and whatnot. But he's actually a fighter that is decently polished up with his grappling, and I think he's actually going to pull off, or he very well could pull off a submission as well. So he could rain down some ground and pound on Taveras, but can also pull off a submission as he breaks down Taveras and as he wears him out. I could see Taveras maybe looking for a way out of there or making some kind of mistake and being submitted. You take a look at Cortavious' resume: 2 knockouts, 4 submissions, 1 decision. Out of those 7 victories there. So he is a pretty solid BJJ player. 29 years old. He's not a spring chicken, and he's a pretty mature fighter here, as is Taveras. I'm going to take Cortavious Romious. I'm going to say he gets a finish. Why not? I'm going to say he gets a finish. I think he has a variety of ways he can go for that finish as well. Could be a TKO type finish. Could be a submission. There's a couple different ways he can go, and I do like him there. So let's go take a look at the betting line there. He is a flat 2-1 favorite on Bovada.lv. He's a -200, and I think that's where that line should be. I thought that line was pretty accurate. I wouldn't want to see it steam up too high, 230, 240. That's a little crazy, but I think that it's reasonable. If you can get it at 190, 180, obviously that's better. But we're already seeing it as high as a -240 on Bet Online, and it opened up as a -150. So action has been coming in on Cortavious Romious, and that could be due to people just starting to really run the tape back and just remember how Ramon Taveras looked just a couple weeks back when he was dropped and hurt. So give me Cortavious Romious to get the job done, and I will say he finishes the fight. I'll say via submission. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up DWCS Week 10, the last episode of the season. It's been great chatting it up with you guys throughout this entire season. Of course, I'm not going anywhere. You still have my regular UFC prediction videos for the regular cards. But as far as DWCS goes, this will be the end of this for a little bit. I appreciate you guys all tuning in, and I hope you guys make some solid money on this card. I will definitely have some official action locked in on this card. If you're interested in working with me, shoot me a message, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, or email. And I appreciate you guys so much. Again, don't forget to subscribe if you've been just tuning in for these Dana White's Contender Series fights. Subscribe to the channel because, again, you're going to see all types of content coming your way. Stick with me here. All right, guys, I appreciate you. Have a great week, and you guys will see plenty more from me here throughout the week. So, all right, signing out. Teller.
Welcome to the show. This is the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.